I'm John from Schroeder Log Home Supply. I'm here with Chris at his lovely log home on Pekagama. We're taking a look at a few different things, questions he might have about the home, things that jump out to me, and various technical tips and concerns. We're on the lakeside now, and this is getting a lot of sun right now. A lot of times the top curvature of log is what really gets baked by the sun. That's when you do restain, whether you're doing it as a homeowner or hiring it out, just one thing to be sure of is maybe it's comfortable in the sun to work if you like the heat, but don't apply your sun directly in the heat, because even if it's 50, 60 degrees outside, especially the top curvature of the log can be well over 100 degrees, and most stains are going to have an application temperature of like 50 to 90 degrees, and so some are more sensitive than others to temperature, but if you're applying your stain directly in the sun like this, it could be flash drying. Your logs are basically cooking the stain before it can even penetrate and get a good hold. So that can be a factor for log home performance, is just making sure that you're applying out of direct sunlight at the correct temperature, dry wood that's ready to receive your coating. No matter what coating you're using, the preparation of the wood is key. Just washing it, making sure it's clean, making sure it's sound, and making sure it's warm but not hot. You want it, ideally, like I said, 50 to 90 degrees, and really the surface temperature is more important than the ambient temperature on that, because that's what your stain is going to. So if it's hot to the touch, definitely don't apply your stain then. It'll flash dry. Sometimes logs get a bad rap about being energy inefficient, but really massive wood is a great thermal performer when it comes to regulating heat. Speaking from experience, growing up in a log home, they're cozy. They can hold the heat cozy in the wintertime, and they stay cool in the summer, but they do have quite often a lot of gaps, and so as long as you take care of points of air infiltration, that's where the air is exchanging, and to have the best control of temperature, you don't want the air coming and going through every gap where the roof meets the wall, between every log. And you said that you had a thermal imaging test done, a blower door test some time ago, and that showed you where all the cold spots were, or the hot spots in the summer maybe?
Correct, yeah. I think our biggest concern since we've bought the log home, we obviously love the look of it, but we've noticed that it can be a bit chilly in the winter time, and we've done some improvements after that blower door test. Done some improvements and renovations to the house to try to mitigate that. But I have heard that in between the cracks is where you can find some of that air coming in. So what would your advice be to try to maintain that and keep that cool air out in between those cracks?
Yeah, the best thing to do is get a blower door test like you did. Then the energy auditor will give you images showing where the air is leaking, and so then you don't have to guess and just caulk willy-nilly. you can target and see this is where it's getting out and take care of it. So you've already got these joints taken care of, it looks like. So caulking, that's usually putting in a backer rod, that foam rope, and then about a 1/4 inch thickness of the caulk over top. Or if a chink style home is what you've got, then you've typically got a wider contrasted textured line. But yeah, the short answer is caulk it, and that's usually a one-time thing. If you do it correctly, good caulking will last for decades. Maybe you need to do a little maintenance right away if it got applied too thinly or it didn't get a good bond. You walk around a couple weeks later, or even a few months later as it's gotten a chance to dry, or even the next year when it's gone through heating season and the logs have moved, you can go and see if maybe it failed in some areas because it cracked in the middle, it was too thin, or it didn't get a good bond to the surface, so it pulled away. So maybe you have to go and just touch up some things that didn't go well the first time. But if it's been installed properly with a good quality caulking right off the bat, usually that's pretty much I dare say a maintenance-free aspect of log homes, or very minimally maintained. A lot of times what you see is around doors and windows, you've got round logs creating this wedge, and then you've got the flat trim of doors and windows inside and outside. A lot of times you get these little pie-shaped pieces, and I see you've already got these. These are some pretty cool foam pieces that are just about a perfect fit. You can just push them in inside or outside, and that can help keep the airflow down. You've got these just left uncovered, which is fine. Some people like to blend it into what they've got for chinking or caulking, and so you could also go over top of it with a caulk or a chinking just to blend into the wood if you wanted, but there's, they work perfectly fine just as a pressure fit too.
Sure. Is there any concern with some areas here in the wood? You can see here, kind of up here where it looks like it's fading.
So right here you got a knot, and then you've got the natural design of the wood where it's got from the knot, this is probably a pine, so you've got a lot of resin, and so you've got these pitch pockets, this harder wood. It's just hard for your stain to penetrate, to get a good adhesion, because the wood is already naturally protected by what's designed into it with your resins, and then also just denser wood. So sometimes it's just nigh impossible to get a stain to adhere to that. You can try to wipe it down before staining with a solvent to break down those natural oils. You can try to rough it up a little bit by sanding, but to some degree, wood is wood, and sometimes that just happens where, it's an aesthetic thing. It's not a performance thing, because, this wood is naturally protected. It's where you have the cracks open where water can get in. That is a bigger concern. There are other areas where you've got a knot here and the stain has adhered just fine. So if this bothers you, you can touch it up with a stain periodically, but quite often that's the nature of some species in particular.
And as a new, someone who is new to log homes, I've heard about chinking and understand caulking. Could you explain what's the biggest difference between the two and benefits to either doing one versus the other or both?
That's a question we get all the time. What's the difference between chinking and caulking? To some degree, it's just semantics. They can be used interchangeably to some degree. How they're the same, they are both sealants. They're an elastomeric in the modern definition, at least. They're elastomeric. They'll stretch and they'll move with the wood. They adhere. They seal your cracks. They keep the water out. They keep the air in or out, depending on what you want to heat or cool. So they're both sealants. Where they're different, historically, when you're building a log home, a log cabin, out on the frontier, you're putting up something just to stay warm for the winter. You're stacking logs, maybe you're doing an intricate dovetail notch, maybe you're just stacking with barely a notch at all, but inevitably they would have these gaps between the logs. And so they would use whatever they could, whether it's moss, horsehair, sticks, manure, mud, whatever they had, just chinking and daubing, they'd just be filling that gap. And then over time, that got kind of replaced with a mortar mixture. So a lot of times you'd have a wire mesh or some kind of a hardware to hold it into place, and then put a mortar mixture, Portland cement, lime, sand, some combination. Some people are still using that for various reasons, for budget or for historic purposes. But the mortar mixture often will crack and fall out to some degree. Along the lines, that got replaced with the design of a synthetic chinking that looks like mortar, so it's got that texture to it. It looks like cement, but it's rubbery, and it stretches and it moves with the wood and it performs. So that's where we are with chinking today. It's a caulk that looks like an old mortar, and typically it's used between the logs. To some degree, you can use it in other places that you might be using caulk, but usually the chinking is going to be in 1/2 inch, 1 inch gaps and wider between the logs. Caulking is typically, if it's a log home caulk, it's going to generally have more elasticity. It's going to be better for those smaller cracks. Here although it's acting like a chinking, I'm going to call this a caulk, because it is between the logs like a chinking, but it's for smaller gaps. You've got pretty much like a flat on flat or tongue and groove where there's not a lot of gap in there. So it's still sealing the gaps. If you're using caulk between the logs like a chinking, or to seal the cracks that you have in the logs, you're also using it around the doors and windows. You're using it in those smaller cracks, just trying to keep the water out, keep the air from passing. So maybe that's a confusing answer, but caulk and chinking, they're the same, but they're different. They're sometimes interchangeably, but there are some areas you might choose one over the other. Smaller gaps that are 1/4 inch, for instance, I would just caulk it. If it's a wide, over 2 inch gap, usually the chinking is going to have more structure and be better for those. Since you don't have a chink style house, all of your gaps are pretty much, pretty small, I would say. Forget about chinking, you're just going to be caulking this house. unless you wanted to cover these, then you might use a chinking. Yeah, so does that answer questions you might have about sealing the gaps and keeping the air where you want it, inside
Definitely.
or out?
I think that's actually, Tyler did this side of the house. He recommended doing chinking around the entire house, but I remember the cost of it was, you know, at the time something we're like, we'll pass for now, and wanted to focus on other areas first. But that was really helpful, because that's good to know that we could just use caulk just around the whole house. And next time we stain, we might have, you know, we'll probably go back to Darren again, have him maybe do that as well, especially if it could last. I didn't realize it could last like 10 years. And
that's where the thermal imaging, getting a blower door test and thermal imaging is great. Then you don't have to just guess and caulk everything and hope you got it. With thermal imaging, you know exactly where the weak spots are. So even if it's not in your time or budget to caulk the whole house, boy, you can be really targeted about it and just get those areas that are really leaking, and you could see drastically improved heating bills just from taking care of those weak spots. A lot of times the weak spots are right where the wall meets the log. If you have tongue and groove that's going from inside and to outside, those little wedge-shaped holes can be areas where a lot of air goes out, because air is going up and then it's going out. So really focus on not only between the logs, but where the wall meets the ceiling. That's another point of escape. But of course, air leaks around windows and roofs on any home, whether it's wood or log or not. So, yep, those are areas to look for. A blower door really helps you find the bad spots.